Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because this is who we are, always and forever. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Is basking in the new fall season and hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, The Vampire Diaries, The Good Place, Grace and Frankie, Game of Thrones, Broadchurch, Stranger Things, iZombie, Fuller House, American Horror Story, Doctor Who, Supernatural, The X-Files, and the Arrowverse on the CW. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for a series of unfortunate events, Once Upon a Time, 13 Reasons Why, Orange is the New Black, and the Marvel's Defenders panel will talk Season 3 of Daredevil. We'll be launching new panels covering The Crown, Westworld, Arrested Development, Jane the Virgin, and The Americans. We'll be launching a new feature called Versus, where we'll be comparing shows in a spicy debate. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll be looking back at one of our most popularly requested panels of all time, which is Friends. And I promise you, gentle listeners, those who've requested it and otherwise, they will be there for you very soon. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from the Bunker, comedy outlet Mondays at Dog Story Theater in Grand Rapids Comic Con, and we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in the podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, as long as you're being original about it. We want to hear from the authentic you, that's what I mean. Today, we're around the water cooler and discussing Season 5 of The Originals, which aired April 18th to August 1st, 2018 on the CW. To remind the listener, The Originals, a spin-off from The Vampire Diaries, centers on three of the Mikaelson siblings. Klaus, played by Joseph Morgan, Elijah, played by Daniel Gillies, and Rebecca, played by Claire Holt. The Mikaelson family is called the Originals because they're the first vampires to ever exist. Niklaus, or Klaus Mikaelson, is a descendant of a witch and a werewolf, and his quest to unleash his hybrid nature was detailed in The Vampire Diaries. The backdoor pilot, which aired on April 25, 2013 during the regular run of The Vampire Diaries, also revealed that the werewolf Hayley, played by Phoebe Tonkin, is pregnant with Klaus's child. The series begins with the original siblings returning to the city of New Orleans for the first time since 1919, where pregnant Hayley has also settled. Having originally built the city, they had been forced to abandon it when fleeing from their vengeful father. In their absence, Klaus's protege, Marcel, played by Charles Michael Davis, took charge of the city. Klaus resolves that they must take down Marcel and get back the city that once belonged to them. While doing that, they must also protect their city from a war brewing between vampires, werewolves, and witches. Over time, new and old friendships are formed, love is in the air, death surrounds them, and the Originals learn more about their own family past. In the fifth and final season of the series, the action takes place 7 years after the fourth season, with Hope, now played by Danielle Rose Campbell, a teenager at a school for supernatural children, is desperately wanting to reconnect with her father, who was separated from Hope, as were all the Mikaelson siblings, due to the need to keep the destructive and fatal magic of the Hollow away from her, as depicted in the fourth season finale. Our small but robust panel of returning Mikaelson fans, originals in their own right, namely Jenn S. and Jenn K., are back around the water cooler to dissect in our usual devoted detail, for better or for worse, the final season of The Originals. We'll also pause, as we always do with final seasons or series, to look back at the show as a whole and to consider how we think it will fare after the passage of time, as well as how it all came out in the wash in the end. Before we do, as always, I'm going to take a moment to double-check the panel's temperature. After all, as we all know, sometimes a TV show can take turns for the better or the worse in our heads, or can continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof, depending upon its story evolution. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed all of the originals and will, let's face it, discuss very sensitive plot points. So for those of you who are not caught up on this show, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, Originals panel. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. Good. Are you ready to talk about the 5th and final season of the Originals?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Some with enthusiasm, some with tentative sadness, maybe. Well, as I said in the intro, I'm going to take a moment to take your temperature along the CPU standard character question that changes with each show we do. Are you ready, panel?
Yes. Yes.
They're so agreeable. So how would you rate your interest in the Originals after having watched all 5 seasons? Do you find the show and many of its characters noble as an overall homage to classic literature such as Shakespeare, Machiavelli, or Greek tragedy, but also the guiltiest of pleasures and one you may even be slightly embarrassed to confess you love? However, you love it deeply and would do anything you could to defend its honor or to protect it, to help it redeem itself if it goes astray, even when you want to forget about watching it for a while, like Elijah Mikaelson. Though your morals lack because you've been the world's scourge for a millennium, you love this show and this family, and especially Hope, and would do anything to defend or to protect the show or them, consequences be damned, even if your opinion of it can be ever conflicted, like the werewolf-vampire hybrid you are, like Klaus Mikaelson. Do you like this show because you love the original family, perhaps more than it deserves and certainly more than it's done for you, and you'll protect it no matter what the cost to you, like Freya Mikaelson? Do you enjoy the show, particularly the original family, though some of its member characters particularly frustrate you, such as Klaus and Elijah, and or you felt that storylines for certain characters were too rushed in the end, like Hope Mikaelson Marshall? Do you like only certain characters on the show, most of whom are not Mikaelsons, like Marcel or Davina, and or you were only watching it for the continuation of the vampire lore of this universe, like Josh Rosa? You don't like the show or the family it portrays as much as you thought you did. You just watch it less for the family and more for the New Orleans backdrop because you love the city, and or you've grown to like the show in spite of yourself because the family and New Orleans went hand in hand, even though that coupling was sometimes toxic to the story and to your sense of self, like Marcel Gerard. You don't like the show or the family it depicts because it threatens your very existence, your city, your friends, and your family, or you could care less about vampires, preferring the witches instead, and or you are ready to leave New Orleans and for the show to be done, like Vincent Griffith, or you stopped watching the show and jumped the shark, or you don't want to watch this show anymore because, spoiler, you died, though you might have loved it at first, like Hayley Marshall. Who would like to start?
This is Jenn S.
Hi, Jenn S.
Hello. I honestly think... Okay, wait. First, is this like an overall of the 5 seasons or just season 5?
Just season 5.
Just season 5?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have to say that I am probably just Elijah.
Okay. You were Elijah with some Klaus and a dash of Freya, and you tried to be Hayley, and I told you that didn't make sense. And then you said, you don't want me to choose 4. And I
don't
said,
remember this happening.
It's in a recording. The whole internet has heard this.
Well, to be honest, I have not listened to this recording yet. Or the past one, not this one. What's happening now?
That's true. That would be power.
Back and listen to a bunch of different ones. So anyway.
So you're Elijah. Why are you Elijah for season 5?
For everything that it says here.
Okay. So you find it noble and an overall homage and the guiltiest
and I feel like I have to defend its honor and protect it. Even through, with all its ups and downs. I still love the show. I'm going to miss it. I'm very sad that it's gone.
Okay.
Done, right?
I'm convinced.
All right.
Welcome back, Jenn S.
Thank you.
I'm Jenn K. I would say I'm kind of a mix between Josh and Vincent.
Oh. Last time you were Freya and Hayley. They were higher up the scale.
Yeah. It just seemed like they rushed everything through season 5 to get it done and to try and get the pilot for the next show in order. I mean, obviously they only had 13 episodes to do it, but I felt like they still could have done more stuff like potentially with the Hollow, having her come back rather than just like showing like the weird like internal struggle that she had.
Well, welcome back, Jenn K. This might be a spicy recording. And of course, I'm Kylie, as I've mentioned in the introduction. Last time I was Elijah, I'm still Elijah. I do think that season 5 particularly, I actually posted something about the show on Facebook, and what I said was season 5 kind of went out with a whimper rather than a bang in some respects, which after some of the epicness, particularly of seasons 2, 3, and 4, I thought was an odd choice. But in the end, I still love the characters. I still love the family. I think the concept of the show is highly original. Ha ha ha. And so, in the end, I will miss it terribly. And I would recommend this show so fast over the Vampire Diaries. I watched all 8 seasons of the Vampire Diaries. I enjoyed the Vampire Diaries. I didn't enjoy it as much as the original. So, to that end, that makes me Elijah. So, welcome back, panel. And we're now going to talk about season 5, but we're also going to take some time, not a lot of time, but some time to look back at the whole show. Jenn S. has actually been with this panel since the beginning, so she's covered all 5 seasons, or will have. And Jenn K., you joined us for season 4.
Yep.
So that will also kind of give us some opportunity to go back from your perspective and look at the whole show. But let's start with season 5. This is all about the idea that the family wants to come, well, particularly Hope wants the family to come back together. She's particularly missing her father, but because she wants that and tries to make it happen, she brings all of the hollow bone magic back together and stuff happens. Not to mention the fact that Klaus's redemption is very much at the forefront this season between all of the different characters. So what did you think of season 5? What did you like? What didn't you like?
I'm getting really annoyed with all these time jumps.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was one in season 4, and then there's one now, and then from what I read for the Legacy series coming up with the spinoff for Hope Mikaelson is that that's going to take 2 years after what happens in the originals.
Are you planning on watching Legacies?
I don't think so. I kind of lost interest. I mean, obviously with the originals, I just wanted to watch it through, obviously to still continue with the podcast, but now that it's done and Vampire Diaries is done, I think I'm going to step away from it.
Okay, fair enough. Mm-hmm. So you didn't like the 7-year time jump that happened here?
Not that itself, but the fact that they've done it before, and then they're going to be doing it something similar again, even with the new series, it's like, okay, is every single time that there's a new season, is there going to be a time jump? Okay. Like, is that something we're going to be expecting? And if they did it once, obviously I would understand it, but at least, like, they didn't go back and forth like they did in Vampire Diaries, but to do that again, I thought that was a little too much.
I have so many thoughts right now. I didn't realize, I thought that spinoff was not going through. I thought they're not doing it.
They ordered it to series, and it premieres sometime early October.
Ah.
Yeah, because it was between, I think it was that, and then there's also the potential Supernatural spinoff.
Which they did not order to series.
Correct.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know about that one. How do you all know about these things?
You did know about Supernatural. That was the Wayward Sisters. That's what they
yeah.
Which we talk about on our Supernatural podcast.
Yeah.
Which
I thought it
both
was
are on.
Don't mind me. Okay, first I'm going to talk about the time jump. I actually did not mind that so much. I think they kind of needed to do it because when we left in season 4 Hope was little, right? She
right.
Whatever age, 8, 7, yeah.
7 or 8.
So that's a lot of years to kind of, I don't think they could make this show have a closure with her being little because she didn't really come to her full potential, to her powers, I think. So I think they kind of had to do the time jump. Now, 7 years is a pretty big jump, but that's when, she's a teenager, she's coming into all her powers and she's more moody. You have more drama, I think, making her a teenagers. Wow. Teenagers. I told you I can't talk.
Tri-bred teenager.
Teenager. So I liked it, but what I had a little bit of a problem, I think that when you first start a season off with that time jump, it's very confusing. And so for a little bit, I was like, what's going on? If it had not been for the actress that portrays Hope, I probably would have taken me a little longer, but she looks a lot like Hayley. Like, they did a really well done job casting her. Because, I mean, she had her mannerisms down and everything. I loved it. I loved that.
So you really like Danielle Rose Campbell in this role?
Yeah, I don't know their names.
Okay.
Yes, and that's who that is. Whoever plays Hope.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, she was good. I think that she really sold it as being Hayley's daughter. You know, she really fit the bill on that, I guess.
I agree. I thought Hope was well cast. I don't know that I have. I think I'm more on Jenn S's perception as far as the time jump is concerned.
You mean me, Jen K?
No, I'm more agree with Jenn S about the time jump. Like, I think it was necessary. I don't think they had the luxury. They were always on the bubble, so I don't think they had the luxury of being able to explore Hope's lifetime over the course of several seasons. And I think in order for it to be believable to bring the Mikaelsons back together, we really needed, somebody who was more realized in her potential as far as her abilities, but also someone who was of her own mind. The 7-year-old Hope was still being held, handheld when we last watched her by Freya and by the others in the family. So for me, the time jump didn't bother me. However, while I agree that her casting was really good and she did a very good job sort of channeling Phoebe Tonkin, who plays Hayley Marshall, part of me was a little bothered by her. I don't think she had a depth in her performance that I would have expected. I mean, certainly when we watched the Vampire Diaries actors, many of them were similarly aged when that show first started, and I thought a lot of them were better than her. That being said, I think the way they used her didn't bother me as much. I think the way they told the story didn't bother me as much. But there were just still times when I was like, she kind of looks like a deer in headlights right now. Or she's kind of throwing a tantrum in a petulant way, which makes sense, but it's a little too juvenile the way she's doing it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but she kind of bothered me at points too.
No, I agree with that. But if you look at, again, I don't know actor names real well, but Hayley, the actress that plays that character,
Phoebe Tonkin,
she kind of, she sometimes gets that deer in the headlight look.
She does, but her line delivery is more convincing.
Yes, definitely, I agree with that. But I'm thinking that maybe there were times where the actress Hope, whatever. Again, I think maybe she was trying. It almost sometimes seemed like she was trying too hard.
Yes.
At points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, maybe that's because she is, I'm assuming she's young in real life.
Yeah. She's like 18 or 19 when I checked, like, IMDb.
Yeah, I think that sometimes that comes across. Maybe that's what they wanted. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, Kylie, what you're saying.
Yeah. And I guess her youth makes sense, and maybe she's inexperienced, because I've never seen this actress before this particular season or the originals, but with such a heavy story that they were telling, which revolved around her so much, I just felt like sometimes, and part of it is her disadvantage because she's set up against people like Joseph Morgan and Daniel Gillies, and they're phenomenal in their characters. They're very charismatic. Sometimes they overpower some of the other adult actors, so it's not surprising that it would, overpower her.
Even with it, too, those other actors, they've had more time to, like, dive into their characters. They've had longer, where she's only had one season.
That's
even though,
true.
like, the character's been on there for a while.
That's true, but then that kind of goes back to what you said earlier on when you were identifying your characters, is that, they had to rush through things, so...
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's her fault, if you will.
Right.
But it was hard to kind of suspend disbelief the entire time she was on the screen, just because you had to adjust, first of all, to her getting older really quickly. And she did kind of channel Phoebe's performance, but then, when you're considering everything that the story was trying to reach for by the end, it almost as if it's almost as if it overwhelmed her a little bit. But that's not to say that I thought she did a bad job in the end either. I didn't hate her. It was just, I thought Summer Fontana, who played the 7-year-old version, was more winning in the role probably than her.
I agree.
So actually, that segues into kind of the next point. So the whole reason the whole kickoff for this entire season basically starts with Hope, who has not seen her father. Klaus, we have kind of two tensions going on here. We have Hope, who's at Alaric school, and she's kind of in her Harry Potter Hogwarts place and kind of being a teenager, and Caroline is there, and Alaric is there. But then Klaus, who had been keeping in contact with Hope for some of the distance that he was maintaining, ended up stopping contact with her altogether. And for whatever reason, she started to get desperate to see her dad again. And in order to do that, and in order to get his attention and maybe get him back to New Orleans, she gives her blood to a vampire at the school and makes him a hybrid. And that's what kicks off this entire series of events. So where did you think of where the series started? And also, Candace King, a.k.a. Caroline Forbes, was back for several episodes this season. What did you think about that?
I liked it. I mean, I love Caroline. I mean, I like that character, the actress, everything. So I was happy to see her back. Yeah, like I said, the first episode of the season, I was a little bit confused at what was going on and all that. But I didn't not like that whole thing with her. I guess maybe I was confused a little bit at first, and then later on, I guess comes out and everything, but it was good, I guess. Okay, so my thing is, this had been going on, like the distance between all the siblings and everything, and Klaus not having contact with Hope for 7 years, right?
Right.
Why so long? Why, like, you would think that they would try to come to a resolve a little sooner than 7 years. I guess that is part of my problem with the time jump. I don't overall mind the time jump, but 7 years is kind of a long time. I understand, like I said earlier, that they did it probably because that would make Hope a teenager and there's maybe more action drama going on versus maybe she was only 13 or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Or because they have this legacy, that's the spinoff that's happening, and maybe they wanted a older teenager or character to play. So if it goes into that, I mean, but like you said, Jen, that there's going to be a time jump for that.
And with it, too, it was probably easier for them to sell it to CW if they were like, oh, well, this actress was on the show for at least one season and is a teenager, like the demographic that we want to target, so it makes more sense for it.
But is it going to be the same actress?
Yes. And then Matt Davis,
Alaric, yeah.
Yes, he plays Alaric. He's going to be in it, too. And they have the actresses that are playing his kids, was it Josie and Lizzie?
Yes.
They're going to be in it, too. Like, they're cast as main characters.
Oh, okay.
So is your question, Jen, more that why did they make her a teenager, or why that the family didn't connect with her sooner?
Yeah, why did the jump have to be so long? I have a hard time believing that they went 7 years without having contact or very little contact or trying to resolve all of that.
Yeah, so I think the show explained it, and it's just a question of whether or not you buy it. Klaus did try to contact her. He was keeping in regular contact for a little bit, but then as she grew older and the separation was a little bit unbearable for him, plus his capacity to sort of internalize unconditional love has been greatly ruined by Michael, the man who would be his father. That's been one of Elijah's quests over the entire time we've met these siblings, is Klaus cannot allow himself to love and be loved in return. So as Hope was becoming more bonded to father, even though he couldn't be by her, eventually he ends up giving up. There's a whole scene where Hayley tries to call him, and he's like, well, just let her know that I called, and then it doesn't really reach out anymore. So for him, I think they explained it. Elijah's explained because he has removed his always and forever curse, so he wouldn't try to reach out to any of them. And then they do say that Rebecca talks to her, but Rebecca and Marcel are off being Rebecca and Marcel, and she's always been kind of the spoiled brat. And then Cole and Davina are married now, and I don't think Cole was as bonded to Hope as the rest of them were. Cole's not as bonded to any of them as the rest of them are. So I think they explain it. So whether or not you buy that or not, I don't know. But I agree with Jen K. I think there's a reason why they made her a teenager, and it was because they were eyeballing this spinoff. So, and I think that's really what it came down to is, yeah, in order for that to be a palatable, realistic spinoff, we had to see Hope in this version on the originals first, or wherever first, before they could give her entire own show. Jen K., you don't have any thoughts about Caroline?
Yeah, I did like seeing her. My main thing with the season that I really didn't like was that they wiped Elijah's memory and got rid of that all is in forever thing.
They did that in the fourth season finale.
Right, but then you see more of it in the repercussions, because they didn't like it, especially when they had the whole, I understand why they did it, but having the whole episode to explain what he did during that time, I just felt like it dragged on. It felt like it felt a little filler to me. Probably slightly necessary filler, but still okay, we could have found another way to do this, and it would have made more sense, kind of thing. And it would have been picking up the pace a little more.
Speaking of that, and I actually have a response to that, but what did we think about Antoinette, the vampire that he met and sort of fell in love with while under this amnesia, if you will?
I just didn't like her. I didn't like her either.
Explain.
I'm not gonna like anybody that's not Hayley, because I firmly believe that Hayley and Elijah should be together.
Oh, well.
I know.
That didn't happen.
I know. Yeah. But yeah, no, I guess I didn't. She's a totally new character, right? She wasn't before.
Yeah,
no.
Correct.
That's what I thought.
You might have seen the actress on Once Upon a Time. She played the Black Fairy in season 6.
That's it, yeah.
This was the first time she's been on the originals.
I knew I had seen her before, but I didn't think it was on the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it was then.
I don't know. I didn't connect with her like I have done before with the other characters. Maybe, again, it was the thing where it's they only had 13 episodes. They had to rush through a lot of stuff. And also just, I guess, under the circumstances for how she was introduced, and especially, she was with Elijah, even though he had, no memory of, what happened in the past. It just, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. The actress was fine, but all I can say is meh.
Fair enough.
She was there. It was fine. That's about it. Otherwise, I think they could have gone by with other stuff, but...
Yeah, and I do kind of agree with your assessment, Jen K., that it felt a little bit like filler. That's kind of my overall critique about the whole season, is that instead of aiming for something that was truly epic in scope from a total story standpoint, they did this very odd and unusual thing for the show and decided to focus in on the characters themselves and how they eventually reach the end. And I think some of that was executed very well. So in terms of Klaus's journey, I think he really had a robust beginning, middle, and end over the 5 seasons. With Elijah, however, because they knew they had to... the idea of exploring the removal of the always and forever motto and draw from his brain was an interesting one, but maybe they probably should have introduced that a lot sooner in the series than they did. I think they did not have enough time to kind of, like you said, they rushed it to kind of explore this. We might have felt a little more for Antoinette in the end, because you're right, she wasn't a bad character, but there really wasn't enough time to like her or to sympathize with her. We had already watched the shocking death of Hayley right around the time that she came on the scene. Those episodes are back to back, and so it was really hard to take that he was with somebody else and why he would be that, and your brain can suspend some disbelief, but your heart saying, but, what about all these other seasons? And then they're trying to get him back to a place where he can remember by the end of the series, because otherwise, where would the emotional impact have come from there? He's got to remember his family. He's kind of like the stand-in patriarch of it. So... I totally agree with that in some senses. On the other hand, where they did have filler, I think they did a nice job of giving us some really good performance moments for these actors, because even though there were some slow episodes that spent a lot of time in places maybe we didn't want to be, what I can say is it was interesting to see Daniel Gillies play like a laid-back Elijah that doesn't have as much of a care, if you will. I think that's a stretch he hasn't been given since he started playing the character. So I thought that was interesting.
I will say I did like the character Ivy, just because she was different. Another witch that didn't have anything to do with, obviously, the Mikaelsons, but just kind of got thrust into everything. I was a little more bummed out when she died, probably just because with all the stuff Vincent's gone through, at least having him kind of connect with someone and then have it ripped away from him, that was a little hard to see.
Indeed. Vincent has had quite the journey. He's been kind of the punching bag of the series.
Yeah.
And then we have, so speaking of Antoinette, I mean, she's also important because sort of the first half of the season, we see the introduction of this vampire cult that believes above all in the superiority of the, quote, vampire race. So clearly allegorical, clearly going for sort of a vampire Nazi fascist vibe. But Antoinette turns out to be the surrogate daughter of the founder of this cult, which Klaus had kind of given a run for his money back in the early 20th century. Auguste was his name, and he thought Klaus was, basically an abomination as a hybrid. And then him and Elijah kind of roughed him up a little bit. So we have him starting this cult. Greta is the wife. She's the one that goes after Hope and Hayley. We have Antoinette, who's their surrogate daughter. She's not really part of the cult, but defends her family members where necessary. And then we have Roman. Roman is the young boy vampire. I mean, he's older than that, but I guess he's a vampire. But he is at Hope's school. He's kind of the dreamy jock, sweetheart, everybody loves him person that seems to, Hope seems to have a crush on, and he seems to return that only to find out that he's been positioned at the school so he can infiltrate and befriend Hope, and as part of this vampire cult because of his mother, Greta. What did we think about the vampire cult storyline? Because that also ropes in sort of the factions in New Orleans have enjoyed a relative peace since the Mikaelsons left, and that peace has been brokered by Vincent, Freya, Hayley, and Josh. They've all worked together to make sure that the factions aren't fighting. And then as the Mikaelsons come back together, but also as this vampire cult becomes a thing, the factions start to splinter apart again. So what do we think about that?
I kind of wish, again, I wish we had more time to go with the fascist cult kind of thing. I think it might have played out a little bit better earlier in the seasons, especially when there was so much tension between the different species.
Like back in the first season?
Yeah. Obviously, the things happen how they happen, but I think it would have played out a little bit more, A, if they had a little more time, and B, if they had it earlier in the series.
I agree with that. Trying to remember, honestly. It explains where she comes from, Antoinette, and I guess I have a hard time believing that she wasn't a part of that with the mom and her brother, I guess, right? Is that
yes.
Right? It was just the two, the daughter and son.
Well, they had the dad, but
the dad was
killed off by Klaus.
Yeah, which is what started the whole thing, vendetta, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I have a hard time believing that she wasn't with that. Antoinette was not with them in this vengeance.
Even though she tried to explain that she wasn't?
Yeah.
She's a vampire.
I mean, family is family, right? Family is family, I think. I don't know. I'm not buying it, I don't think.
You just didn't trust her. She was taking the place of Hayley, and you wouldn't stand for it.
Yeah, that's it.
We got to the bottom of it. Speaking of Hayley, what about Declan? Declan, the new human boyfriend, who was played by Torrance Coombs, who was on Reign for several seasons. What did you think of him?
I didn't like him either.
No.
Getting in the way of Hayley and Elijah.
And again, Again, it isn't the actor. I think the actor is great. You know, he's cute. He's good. But I just didn't like the character. I just kept waiting for, well, when's he going to get turned into something supernatural? You know, is he going to be a werewolf, witch, vampire, or something? I don't know. He didn't have much. I guess I didn't know much about him. Maybe that might be part of it. I wasn't invested in him as much. I think they did talk briefly maybe about where he came from.
He's revealed to be Cammie's cousin from Ireland.
Yes. Yeah. I think maybe if they had given that up front, maybe I feel like that was kind of drawn out getting to where he came from. Maybe if they would have came up out front, hey, this is Cammie's cousin, I might go, oh, okay, because I love Cammie, so maybe I'm gonna like this character as a cousin. You know, maybe something like that. I don't know. Maybe
I
not.
think kind of like what I was talking about earlier. I think if they introduced him sooner, especially like maybe if they did it like sometime in the like obviously they had the giant time jump, but if they did it like sometime in the 4th season, if you moved there like a little bit more recent to Cammie's death, I think it would have been a little bit more relevant. And again, if they like actually said he was Cammie's cousin earlier, it would have made more of a difference. But I think what they were talking about at the end with him having like being the head of like the human faction of New Orleans and having more of a say in like what all the supernatural stuff does, I think that one would have played a little bit better, I think, earlier in the seasons when there was still more of that division. I think some of my stuff for season 5 that I had the issue with was a lot of the stuff was like introduced like too little too late.
I buy that. I buy that with Declan too. I agree with Jenn S. He's cute. I loved him on Rain. I like that he's Irish. He was fun to watch. He could have been interesting, but we did spend the entirety of season 4 without an O'Donnell. Because I think Camille might have appeared in a dream sequence, but that was it. So I think you're right. If he had come in season 4 and had a little more time to flesh out his backstory, or like Jenn S. had suggested, maybe at least, you know, they waited on the reveal thinking, oh, this will be a twist that has impact. It didn't really have impact. Maybe they should have done that a little bit sooner. Fair enough. So let's talk about, speaking of Hayley, I'm working toward it now. The big plot is that Hope actually, because she wants to assert her independence and get her dad back, and also because she has this impossible crush on Roman, she allows Roman to abduct her mother. And they take her to this farmhouse, and there's talk amongst the cult. Antoinette tries to get Elijah, and Greta tries to get Elijah to kind of stop Klaus, who finds out this is happening and is on the rampage, from stopping the spell that will bind their werewolf sides so that they'll be vampires only and nothing else. And they show up at this house. Hayley kind of puts herself at the forefront to protect Hope, allows the spell to be cast on her first. Her werewolf side is removed. She's left being a vampire without a daylight ring. Klaus and Caroline show up. Elijah and Antoinette show up. Greta's already there as well. Maybe Antoinette's not there, but Greta is. And the long and short of it is, Elijah walks into the house. Hayley is tussling with Greta. She sees Elijah. She thinks he's there to save her. He still is under his removal of always and forever. And then Hayley sees she has no other choice to protect her daughter and to protect her daughter's father in a sense, but to kind of throw herself in harm's way. So she wrestles Greta out into the sunlight, and they both burn, like vampires do. And Hayley dies. Definitively, she's definitely dead, because we see her in the afterlife later on. What did we think about Hayley's death? What a major character blow.
Yeah, I didn't care for her, the way they killed her off.
Because she was killed off, or because of the manner in which it was
No, the manner, yes.
Okay.
The way she was killed off, I didn't care for. And I know Elijah was still under his whole thing, memory block or whatever, and everything, but that just tore me apart. I hated that. As he didn't do anything to help, of course, because he didn't have any feelings to, who is this? He didn't know who she was, but I don't know. I feel like it was too harsh, just going out in the sunlight, pushing out Greta and whatever, and poof, gone in a fire. I just feel like it could have been, for Hayley, I feel like her death should have been more graceful, maybe.
Yes.
More dramatic. I mean, that's pretty dramatic, but you know what I mean? That, like, I felt like, oh, well, you want to talk about rush? Let's just catch them on fire. It's like, like, boom, that's a small point. We're done. Let's move on. You know, like they're burned up. I don't know. I just didn't like it.
I thought it was rushed. Again, like what Jenna said, for everything the character's gone through, especially with she's been on the show pretty much since the beginning, or at least like for the originals, obviously not for Vampire Diaries.
Actually, she was in the backdoor pilot.
Well, right.
Yeah.
I think they could have come up with a different way to write in a death for her. I think with that, it was just like, not lazy, but probably more rushed. Where like, we gotta kill her off. I don't know how to do it. Oh, let's do it like this. Just put her out in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they could have done this at any moment. You know what I mean? Like, couldn't she have gone out in the sun at any moment prior to this fight?
No, well, not for very long, because they had cast a spell to remove her werewolf side. So she was a hybrid up until about 10 minutes before that happened.
Oh, was that quick? Yeah. Gosh. Mm-hmm. I was thinking, oh, wow. I don't know why I was remembering it like it was earlier. Like she had that removed for a longer period of time.
No, it was all in the same episode. Yeah, it was all in the same episode. So,
well, that sucks. Yeah. You're right. It was really rushed. I didn't really put all of that together when you're saying the whole season was rushed. I mean, I have a lot of highlights that I really enjoyed, but you're right. It was rushed. I'm just now realizing that.
Well, quick question though. Like when you guys were watching the series, or not the series, for season 5, did you watch like all together, or like when like the episodes like came out? Because I watched it when it all came available on Netflix, like within like probably like a month.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, okay. I did too.
I generally don't watch things in time because I'm always catching up for the next episode we record, and I would rather watch it and keep it fresh than try to watch it way back when and then talk about it later on.
Well, and what I was talking about when we were first talking about recording it too, I said like, oh, I got to finish Supernatural first. Like I haven't even started on the originals yet, so obviously you kind of have to like prioritize.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
When you're actually watching it for something other than for the sake of watching it.
That's true. I'll talk about Hayley a little bit because I agree with the sense that, you know, she's been there the whole time and it felt like the death was so quick and so tragic because one of the things that we know about Hayley is that she loved being a werewolf. And that part of her was gone at the time she died. Not to mention the fact that there was that connection between her and Elijah. Now, I do think they serviced that quite a bit with showing us her Andrea period, where she went to visit Elijah in France and just to talk to him, basically. As many of the siblings did. We find out that Klaus and Rebecca and Hayley...
Cole.
I don't know that Cole visited Elijah, did he?
I thought you were just like trying to remember the name of Cole.
Oh, no. I know them all very well.
Okay.
But what I was saying was they all came to visit Elijah because they missed his counsel, they missed sort of his wisdom, which he still kind of had showing through even though he didn't remember any of them. But in Hayley's visit, they spent a whole episode kind of showing this flashback where... You know, she meets him, she introduces herself as Andrea. They have a very powerful connection. She's already with Antoinette. Elijah's already with Antoinette. So the fact that this is such a distracting connection, and this is actually something he remembers while he's feeling guilt over allowing Hayley to die. So I think they gave us some emotional impact in the end. But the death was very, very tragic, and not in the sense that I felt it really serviced the story in the end. I think they were trying to give Hope a reason to feel guilty and to get angry and to want to take on the Hollow and all this other business. But to me, where they stuck the death, how they made her die... It just seemed... I got really pissed in the moment. I was like, well, not Hayley, not now. What are you doing? I think I actually said that out loud when I was watching it. There could have been a time when that would have made a lot more impact. And if they weren't going to do it back then they should have just, I think, allowed her to stay alive until the end. But because I don't think it would have made any difference with where the other characters ended up. Whether she was alive or not. That's my feeling. I have strong feelings. And I don't even really... I mean, I don't love Hayley as much as Jen S. does. But I thought she earned her... You know, she really earned her place on it. you end up connecting with the character. She becomes a very sort of stabilizing force for the Mikaelsons, and I think that without her, they didn't even spend a lot of time addressing how the lack of Hayley affected the family, because again, they were rushing through it. So
Right. I will say though, I don't think her American accent has improved in the past 5 years.
well, I mean, she spent more of her life being Australian, okay?
Well, yeah. But even with it, Claire Holt, who plays Rebecca, she's Australian. She gets to keep her accent.
Well, she's actually styling a British accent in the show.
Oh, oh yeah, good point. She gets to keep an accent.
She does, but I don't think Phoebe cared. She's getting paid.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't bothered by her accent at any point. I do think she had to round out certain words to catch herself from being too out Australian, you know, because they're more top palate than we are, but you know, I didn't mind it. It was all right. So then after all of this, you know, because Hayley dies, the siblings come back together, including an amnesiac Elijah, and Hope casts a version of the chambre de chasse spell, the room of, I don't remember what chasse means, room of something spell, that representational magic where they all end up in kind of the Mikaelson compound, but in the dream, if you will. And they have to find the keys to unlock the doors. And they're all together again, Cole included. What did you think about this device? Because they used this before when it was all of the siblings together, Finn included. No one cares.
No, I liked it. Again, it did feel a little bit rushed through. Like you would think that it would have taken them longer to find their keys.
Did you want it to be more than one episode's worth?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No, I did like it though, but I feel like it could have been, maybe not more drawn out. No, I just realized what it is I liked. I think it should have been more challenging for them.
Oh.
Whether that took them longer, it should have been more difficult to find the keys.
Well, it was difficult for most of them.
You think it was? It didn't feel like it.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it.
They didn't start solving the puzzles until Marcel showed up. They were all spinning their wheels and being angry at each other until he showed up. Like they normally do.
Yeah.
I appreciated it because for 2 reasons. One, it was a callback to season 2 when you had the body jumping and Finn coming back alive and all of them being together again. I thought that was a really nice way to kind of remind us where they've come. But also, this was the first episode of the season where all the siblings came back together again. And as I've said in previous episodes that we've talked about the original Zen, I think the show is always better when the family's together and fighting or not fighting than when they're apart. I believe they crossed their 100th episode this season. Maybe not. But
I don't think they were close.
They were close. They may not have crossed it. They were in the 90s at least by the end.
Not with 2 or 3 seasons of only 13 episodes.
But there were still 3 seasons of over 20. So if you do the math, it ends up being over 90.
I'll figure that out later.
Okay. Well, I also have a photographic memory. So they might not have crossed the 100th episode. But what I was going for is Freya and Keelan is where I wanted to go. So Freya and Keelan, impossibly they're still together. I don't really understand that relationship at all, given where it started. I said that the last time. But they're kind of back and forth. Keelan wants to leave New Orleans, wants Freya to go with her. Freya feels she can't because of her responsibility to her family, even though she hasn't been around them that long. That's also very strange. And Klaus is very mean to her. That's also very strange. But in the end, they end up getting married. In fact, they do this partially because Hope, so the reason why she casts that chambre de chasse spell is to distract them so that she can finally extract their hollow magic and put an end to all the stuff once and for all. The problem is because she was the vessel created to house the hollow for the whole reason. That's why she was mystically brought into being, so said the hollow last season. It starts to overtake her. She gets those weird veins and she hears the whispers, and if she allows that magic to overtake her, she will die, and it possibly will bring an end to the world. While they're all coming together to figure that out and to figure out how to get it out of her, they even get Davina to show up, so Cole and Davina come in person to the house. Freya and Keelan decide to get married. Freya asks Rebecca to be her maid of honor, Vincent to be the best man, Cole to officiate. She wants Elijah to walk her down the aisle, but Elijah won't at first until he has his memory of Hayley as Andrea. And then Klaus, actually, when Elijah is in danger of not showing up in time, Klaus offers to walk her down the aisle, but then Elijah does show up, so they both walk her down the aisle. What did we think of the wedding episode?
It wasn't terrible. I think, like...
That's a ringing endorsement.
I'm being very cynical about this. Like,
what?
Again, what I've said for season 5, everything felt rushed. I think Keelan and Freya's relationship has pretty much felt rushed. Like, we haven't really, like, even though obviously, like, 7 years has supposedly gone by, even with it, but, like, having the two actresses together, it's only been, like, maybe a year, give or take. And I don't know, I don't feel as much connection again like I do with the other characters. It wasn't terrible, it was just kind of there, but...
Fair enough.
I must have missed this. I must have missed this episode. I don't remember it.
You don't remember the wedding? And Andrea?
I mean, barely. I must have been doing again, this is a show I do, other things. This is like background until it gets really interesting, and then I stop what I'm doing to watch. I know that's horrible. I say that a lot during some of these shows. I'm realizing that
this is not that show for me, but I'm way too busy wanting to just lust after Elijah to be distracted.
Well, was he in the wedding? Well, yeah, he was.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
I do remember it. I do. I think it, I don't think I cared for it. I don't care for that whole couple. I think.
Freya and Keelan.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the acting or what, but I have a hard time with it.
What I said in the last episode was the troubling start for their relationship was Freya kidnapped Keelan to extract her venom because she was from the Crescent Wolves, and she needed the venom from all of the werewolf packs, and so Keelan then ended up somehow befriending and falling in love with her and vice versa. And it's not disturbing that they're two women, it's disturbing that it started there. It'd be disturbing if one of them was a man and the other one was a woman, or they were two men. Or anything in between, if you're pan or it doesn't matter. It's a very troubling beginning.
Could you argue that it was kind of Stockholm Syndrome-ish?
Yes, that's exactly it. That it's not the fact, maybe it's not the portrayal that the actress was giving. It was just the fact of how they fell in love that was very strange. I had forgotten about how they had gotten together until you were just saying all of that Freya had captured her and had tortured her and all that, and yet now they're together and they love each other madly. That's what I have a problem with. That's exactly it.
And then coupled with the fact that Keelan, who seems like a very intelligent person, she's a doctor, and, feelings get in the way, but she's aligned herself with this highly, highly dysfunctional family. It just seems to me like she's not making some smart choices. Her life choices are questionable at best. Okay.
Yeah. Well, she was, I think before she got captured too, she was like pretty far away from New Orleans and away from that like whole lifestyle. And then she kind of got like swapped back into it.
Well, she did.
How did she get back into it?
Well,
because Freya kidnapped her.
Yeah, because she was one of the last. She's not a Crescent Wolf. She's one of the other wolf packs. She was one of the last surviving members of the wolf pack. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been back in New Orleans.
That's right. I think that like you're saying, that if they had introduced her sooner or in a different way, maybe I would have more of an acceptance of it.
So you're all very unimpressed by the wedding.
Yeah. Yes, I can safely say that. I was very unimpressed.
I didn't care about them getting married, but I did, again, enjoy all of the siblings coming together and kind of the reconciliation of Elijah, because this is where the emotional impact of Elijah starts to come into the season. So I didn't mind it for that. There was a payoff in a character that I did like as opposed to the ones that I didn't like as much. So then, okay, Klaus decides that his grand plan for saving Hope is he's going to have Caroline's daughters, who are really the ones she's surrogate for Josie and Alaric. She's going to allow the twins to siphon, because they're still siphoners, away the hollow magic from Hope. His big idea is that he's going to have them put the magic into him. Caroline, who sees improvements in Klaus, and they sure play with their flirtation this season, I'll tell you what. She's agreeable to it. She's reluctant, but she's agreeable to it. However, when Alaric learns of this plan, he goes ballistic until Klaus reveals that he actually holds a white oak stake, which I thought were all destroyed.
I did too.
Where did the white oak stake come from?
Writer's convenience.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, wait a minute. I thought they were all destroyed. Where does this come from? I was so confused. I still am confused. I don't remember them explaining this.
All he says is that he held one back for
Yeah.
a time when he would need it. He didn't say when he held it back. He didn't say how he got it. He didn't say when this might have happened. He just inferred that with all the conflict with his siblings and with Michael, he kept one for safekeeping. That's
I'm just going to keep this in my back pocket. I might need it someday.
Even though it might kill him.
So I can kill myself. I'll just keep it around.
Right.
So that one I felt was very Deus Ex Machina. Like, okay, we want a big impactful ending. And you pretty much knew where this was going when he popped that stake out, by the way. But then just to say, oh yeah, by the way, remember when we said all the stakes were destroyed and the tree was destroyed? Haha, just kidding. Here's one left. That I had a problem with, because it's such an important detail for the overall series.
For the end, you mean? Really?
Well, for all of it.
Well, yeah.
The White Oak is so important to their mythology, and the fact that they would say, oh, by the way, I have one, Klaus. Mm-hmm. It seems like he'd have been holding that over his sibling's head at least 20 times before now. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I have passion. I thought that was lazy.
Can we get into speaking of White Oak Steak, can we get into how they edited when Klaus and Elijah staked each other with the White Oak Steak? Because they just kind of fluttered away, and you're like, that looks more like...
We'll get there, because we still have...
good.
Yeah, we're in the last third of the season. Let's talk about that before we get to the end.
Okay.
Jenn K.
I know, but if we're already on the subject of the White Oak Steak...
We're very close. So,
all right.
So Alaric, when he sees this White Oak Steak, he says, okay, let's do this plan. Which is kind of funny. And then Hope and Elijah. So while Klaus is brokering this deal over here with Caroline and Alaric, he leaves Hope with Elijah. Now Hope blames Elijah for Hayley's death, rightly or wrongly. And Elijah can't fault her for it, basically. He takes a lot of the guilt of Hayley's death upon himself, but they share this kind of last day together. What did we think about, aside from the White Oak Steak, leave that for a second, what did we think about this development?
I didn't mind it. I don't know.
It's a podcast. Yeah. You have to say more.
Right. I'm aware of how a podcast works.
Okay. Just remember. Just for the,
It didn't feel as rushed. I don't know. I kind of wish that we got to see Hope with the other aunts and uncles more.
Yeah, me too.
Throughout the season 5, at least. Obviously, when she's older, you don't really see her interacting at all with Rebecca or even with Colt. You see her probably interacting more with Davina than any of her actual aunts and uncles.
I agree with that. I'm glad they had this episode with Elijah and Hope, because Hope was such an important... Elijah saw Hope as the hope to save their family. And so I'm glad that they spent time with the two of them together and were able to bond to a place of reconciliation, if not total forgiveness. But I agree, it would have been fun to kind of, again, if they'd had more time maybe, to pair her off with the different siblings, the actual siblings. She had some time with Freya.
Well, yeah, that one obviously made more sense, since they were obviously, they could actually be together without worrying about the hollow.
Right, plus the fact that they're both witches.
Yeah, that too. It was kind of nice to see the little throwback to Mystic Falls for the high school.
It was.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that, and I liked the fact that she magically destroyed the car of some DD who was giving a barista that had a crush on her a hard time.
Oh, yeah.
I think that kid is actually going to be in the spin-off series.
Of course he is. He wasn't just a random kid.
He's going to be like the only like actual human, but of course they're still going to keep him in there. I don't know.
They didn't spend much time with him. And we'll talk about legacies, but yeah.
Can we talk about Josh dying?
Yes, we can. Oh, I did kind of go over that bullet point.
Yeah.
Yes.
That broke my heart.
So Marcel he's actually abducted by the vampire cult because they're going to remove his venom, and then, which they still imply is somehow special hybrid venom. I still don't understand how or why it is special, but they took it anyway. And Josh ends up showing up because he later reveals that Marcel is his only family, especially with Davina off being married and such. And so they scuffle with these vampire cultists, and unfortunately Josh is hit with a stake, or the venom. He's hit with the venom, I think.
Yeah, he's hit with, I think they took like a syringe of the venom, and then he accidentally got stabbed with it.
Right. So it's, I guess, maybe faster and more fatal than even Klaus's venom. And and Josh, spoiler, went to the great vampire heaven and sky, and he saw Aiden, the boy that died that he was in love with.
I didn't realize how much I missed Aiden until he came back on screen.
Yeah,
he was
they were
like,
cute.
oh, it's Aiden! Ugh.
They're cute together. I know, that was super sad because he was always such a kind of a lighthearted, the comic relief of the show in some ways.
I felt like he got a better, weird way to say it, I felt like he got a better death than Hayley.
I agree with that.
I was just thinking that. He died appropriately.
Yes, exactly.
It was so sad. I cried. Oh.
I felt like his death, not that it was more earned, like he deserved it, but that with all the stuff that he's gone through, especially since he hasn't really ever been a focus of the show, like I think he was always like a recurring character. Mm-hmm. I think with it, like he earned the spot to like have us be able to mourn him, I guess. And like for Hayley, it should have been the same way too, to mourn it, but the way that they had her die, it didn't feel as impactful compared to Josh.
Which begs the question, since Jenn just said she cried when Josh died, did you cry when Hayley died?
No.
I don't think so, no.
See, and I didn't either, and I did shed a tear or two for Josh. So I think that's kind of a misstep now that we're talking about it. As Nick says on some of our other panels, sometimes we talk about it at the point of not liking it. But in this particular instance, I think at least this piece of it is true. I mean, you thought there should have been some more emotional gravitas to Hayley's death. Josh's death had it. It was very weird in some ways that these two were set that way. I remember my literal reaction to Hayley's death, and I know we kind of talked about it already, was sort of anger, like, what, why? And then confusion, like, why now?
Yeah.
Whereas with Josh, it made perfect sense. Everything that happened, everything that was shared. Marcel, for the first time, probably ever, I really sympathized with where he was. He felt some good emotion coming through with Josh and mourned his loss, so we mourned with him. So I think you're definitely right about that.
Well, with Hayley's death, they didn't do like a little afterlife thing like they did with Josh, where he went to wherever it was and saw Aiden, and they didn't do anything like that with Hayley.
Not in the same way. What ended up happening is Hope passed out. So that actually segues beautifully into the next part. Hope, the hollow magic overtakes her so much that she passes out because, remember, she also accidentally, Klaus, Marcel, and Elijah all helped her to take out a lot of the vampire cult because whenever she committed violence, the hollow's force, if you will, or energy was appeased enough that she felt some relief from the pain in the voices. And so when she took out those vampires, which is actually how Ivy, the witch seer that Vincent was seeing, spoiler, died, she also accidentally killed a human who happened to be in the building, and a bunch of bookshelves basically fell on him because of the impact of her magic, which then triggered her werewolf curse.
That's right.
Right.
Oh, okay. I watched it, but I think I missed the part where I was wondering like how she triggered it.
Yeah.
Because obviously I knew that she killed all the vampires, but then like if she did it before, then why was it triggered by this one person? But I didn't. Maybe I just like glanced at like something else or something. I think I missed the part where it was a human that she killed.
Yeah, it was real brief. First of all, they can only be triggered by a human death, so the vampires wouldn't have done it. But Klaus actually goes into the back of that church and finds Declan, where he had been trying to look up the information about the different factions and the supernatural, and was talking to kind of a caretaker or maybe even a priest that was in the church. And when she did their magic, both of them were hurt, and Klaus finds Declan, and Declan mentions that the other man is killed, and then Klaus goes and looks, and he's like, oh yes, this is what happens. So her werewolf curse is triggered that way. So while her werewolf curse is on the verge of triggering, while simultaneously the hollow magic is killing her, so she's about to go through this cataclysmic event that might actually kill her as well, cause her to die. She passes out, and in passing out, she has a vision where she sees Hayley, and Hayley is in the afterlife with Jackson, her husband, and with the older woman that was taking care of her, and the other Crescent Wolves that we've met along the way who've died. So we do get an afterlife, just not right after she dies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I had forgotten about that with Jackson and all of that. I do remember that now, yeah. And maybe that's why if they had just put that a little sooner with her death, or, like maybe they should have had her death at that moment. I don't know. I don't know if that would have worked.
I don't know either. I didn't mind it where they introduced it because I think it gave Hope the ability to reconcile with Elijah, first of all.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they needed some conflict to get her to that point. I also didn't mind the fact that they chose to do it the way they did it, and we got to see Jackson. By the way, Nathan Parsons, who plays Jackson, is going to be on the Roswell remake that the CW is also premiering this season. There's a lot of remakes and spin-offs. Don't get me started. Because this podcast will probably hit a lot of them just because.
Yep.
So that happens, and then of course the werewolf curse is triggered. We get to see this moment where Klaus is actually planning to stake himself without saying goodbye. But one of the ways he wants to kind of let Hope go is he watches her transition and then lets her, quote, run free, which is what her mom would have wanted. But then comes back with the intention of staking himself. Elijah and Hope figure it out and come back and stop him. Elijah takes some of the hollow magic into Klaus so that his mind will clear, because at this point he's got the hollow magic, and basically rakes him over the coals for not wanting to say goodbye to his family. And then we kind of get this protracted, so now we're in the series finale, we get this protracted kind of goodbye scene where, first of all, Freya asks Vincent to help her and Keelan father a child, which he initially won't do, but then eventually does agree to do, because first he just wants to leave New Orleans and be done with everybody. Cole is ready to give Klaus the 2 middle fingers and say, fine, you're dying, goodbye, I don't like you, until Rebecca gives him the what for, and he comes back. So then Klaus, basically they go through this scene where there's kind of like a dinner, they're all reminiscing about his various exploits, they do a wish-burning ceremony, which is a nice callback to prior seasons. He kind of gives them all very heartfelt goodbyes, including Hope and Caroline. Caroline says goodbye. Actually, she shows up to ask him for something that he promised her in the backdoor pilot, which was to tour New Orleans, which I thought was an excellent callback as well. And then, where it all comes to bear is that Elijah tells the family, basically asks the family for their blessing to allow him to go. And he basically finds Klaus, breaks the white oak stake that remains in two, and says he's ready to go off into the big empty with Klaus and face it together as they always have. And there's a very heartfelt scene where Klaus says, he doesn't deserve the love that Elijah's shown him. And Elijah's trying to say, but I think you've been redeemed because you finally understand what that love is, and all of this. Also, Marcel and Rebecca get ready to get married. Marcel tells the vampires to leave New Orleans forever, and then we have the final moments. So I'm kind of giving everybody the whole series finale in a nutshell, But what I want you to do is to talk about this final episode. What did you think of it?
I did not like how they ended things with the Hollow. I think they, again, probably with time crunch and rush and stuff like that, with all of the hype that they had for the Hollow, especially how they had it for season 4, I would have liked to see like an actual more like physical manifest of her, like that the actress that portrayed the Hollow, obviously when she wasn't possessing anyone in season 4, I would have liked to seen her come back and maybe have a little bit more of a challenge with that in the family rather than having the Hollow like be reenacted through like Michael and Cammy. Not that it wasn't nice seeing them, but if they were talking about all this like hype as much of a threat as the Hollow was, I think I would have liked to like see more of that impact, I guess. I didn't like how they like fluttered away when they got staked. So I don't know. It just seemed like, I don't want to say like Twilighty, obviously like Twilight Saga, but it kind of felt like it looked like the equivalent of like Vampire Sparkling, where it's like that's how they die, and it's like that's not how they were killed with the White Oak stake before. So why are you like? Obviously, I get it's like 2 big characters that are dying, but why would you change the effects for it? And just like how it ends with them like that, like. What the heck?
So your problem with it is the fact that they didn't turn into sort of decayed ash as opposed to the fluttery stuff? Or is it the fact that they died at all? Because that was the controversy, that the 2 main characters of the show died.
I think more of my beef with it is obviously not necessarily that they died, but like they cut it off right as they were dying. Like maybe give it like a couple minutes afterwards, seeing like how the characters are kind of coping with it, or like if the characters like actually saw them while they like killed themselves, and seeing like more of their like immediate reactions instead of like hearing, oh, they're gonna die, like I'm upset and we have to have all this family stuff, and then just like not seeing how the other characters reacted, like I guess after their deaths, because it just like cut off right afterwards.
I can see some of that, what she's saying, what Jenn is saying about how you didn't get to see, you didn't get to feel the full impact of the other characters and what they felt when they learned. Obviously they learned that the 2 brothers that they died,
right.
That they're gone.
Well, they knew it was going to happen, but they chose to do it in the square by the bench that started off the whole series.
Right. But you didn't, I see what she's saying, that you didn't get to see the after effects of all of that.
Correct.
I honestly thought it was kind of poetic for them to kill each other, because I feel like they've hinted the whole time that this could eventually happen. You know what I mean? Like, the brothers are going to kill each other. And I mean, that's typical. The brothers, in real life or fantasy, whatever.
In real life,
are going to are bound to kill each other, whether figuratively speaking or actually doing it. But no, I honestly, I thought it was fitting. I didn't mind the fluttery stuff as much. I thought it was a little bit weird because that's the first time they've ever done something like that, right?
I think so.
The first time they've ever died.
With the ash? No.
Oh,
Yeah, one of them.
Stuff?
Yes, with the fluttery stuff, like the ash. They usually just, like you said, they usually just turn into a corpse, like a, dried up, petrified.
When it's the white oak, they turn to desiccated ash. They disintegrate into
Have
ash.
we seen that before?
Yes, we saw it with Finn and with Cole on the Vampire Diaries. Because Cole died originally.
Right.
Yeah. You kind of saw them decaying, but then like you had like the weird like, I'm just gonna call it fluttering stuff, like the weird fluttering stuff with it too, and it just didn't seem like it like fit with each other.
Now, when they're staked regularly and not with the white oak, they desiccate, but they remain whole.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
So I actually loved this series finale. The fluttery stuff did not bother me. I don't think we were meant to see the after effects. They gave us enough information that you can extrapolate. So this is one of those endings where you're not going to get closure on everything. You're going to get just enough of a hint of where they're going. And they made all those hints. Klaus blessed Rebecca with the promise of the vampire cure, which Caroline still had some of in Mystic Falls. He told Rebecca that this cure was there in Mystic Falls. It was available for her use. She can live a moral life, which is what she's always wanted. she can live with Marcel and be married, which is what they've always wanted. So there's that blessing. We know that Cole never really liked Klaus, but they reconciled at the end. Cole is happy and off with Davina. I think it was enough what we saw of Cole and Klaus. And then Elijah actually described his conversation with the siblings before they did the staking and said, I told them, this is my one goal in life has been to take care of Klaus. He didn't have a purpose. Hayley was gone. He didn't have anybody to kind of look after. He felt the other ones were doing okay. There was really no reason for him, and he's always wanted to kind of find an end to this never-ending life as well. So in my mind, even though I didn't really want them to die because I love them both so much, and if there was going to be a reason for me to watch Legacies, they would have been it. So to that end, I didn't want them to die, but I thought if they had to die, the way they died was just about perfect. And I think the fluttery stuff was just a flourish, just an end of note. Here's where it is. They're dead. It's done. The originals is done. Kind of fancy artistic business. I didn't think it was anything more than that. So I thought it was a fitting send-off for the show. Even though everything up into it was like you said, rushed, and there was things that they did well and things maybe they didn't do as well. I thought the series finale, they did very well. We had a very long, sort of emotional goodbye with the two characters that probably drew us in the most in the end to begin with, which were Klaus and Elijah. That's how I feel.
I agree with everything on that. Yes, I agree.
Can I say agree to disagree?
You can always agree to disagree. That's why I said at the beginning, this could be a little spicy.
I mean, they've been pretty, cynical throughout it anyway.
That's true. You are Vincent / who else did you say, Freya?
Josh.
Oh, Josh. Yeah, you were even lower than Freya.
That was pretty low.
So now let's transition to some slightly happier things. We're now going to take a moment to look back at the 5 seasons. This is the last episode that CPU will be doing where we explicitly and specifically talk about the originals. And this is kind of tradition. If it's something we haven't been covering from the beginning, we do more of a longer look back episode. If it's something we have been, then we kind of do this quick checkpoint. So, presumably you've both watched all 5 seasons, correct?
Yes.
Which seasons were your favorite and which were your least favorite? I can tell you mine.
I think my least favorite season would have to be season 3.
3 was the one with the sire lines.
Yeah. Which one was with all of the Davina stuff?
Which Davina stuff?
She
had 3 seasons of different story arcs.
Was it the one where she first died?
Or the one where she was that chosen witch?
That one.
That was season 1.
That was season 1?
It was.
You mean when she and the 3 other witches were getting sacrificed, and then she was like, no, screw this, takes all their power and bolts away.
I was thinking that was season 2 or 3. I don't know why.
Nope,
that was season 1?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay. Yeah. Well, then what was season 3?
Season 3 was the sire line. So the different vampires in Klaus's sire line, the different vampires in Elijah's sire line, and the different vampires in Rebecca's sire line were all warring against each other because I don't remember exactly what the reason was, but they were all warring against each other, and it was becoming this big kind of global vampire confrontation. And
that was when Cammy died.
Yeah.
And Davina died too.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the seasons that I liked more.
Yeah.
I can never know which seasons these things happen in.
Right.
So let me start that over then.
Okay.
Season 1 probably is. Probably, I didn't care for all of that. Davina, the whole, the sister witches or whatever. What was season 4?
The Hollow.
Yeah. Oh, The Hollow. Yeah, I did like that. That was probably one of my more favorite ones. Was season 4. And I would have to say season 5 was probably more lower now after talking all about tonight. It was pretty rushed, you're right. And I thought maybe it was in the matter of how I was watching it. I literally watched the whole entire thing in 2 days.
Yeah. Well, do you want to know my picks?
Yes, I do.
Well, my least favorite is season 5. Shocker, I know. With how much I've been griping about it the entire night. My favorite, I actually really like season 2. I think part of it was just bringing back Cole and then introduction of the actor that plays Vincent. Obviously, he was Finn pretending to be Vincent at one point, but then I think he obviously had enough of an impact that they decided to bring the actor on and keep him on for series regular. So that I really liked.
I loved seasons 2 and 3 the best. So 2 being the one Jen just talked about, because it was the whole family, Michael and Esther included. They both had roles. Some of the family were played by other actors because of this whole body jumping or Finn being inside Vincent, etc. But we eventually got to see all the real actors in the end, and that was a very tense season, and I felt it was such a big improvement over season 1. And of course, season 3 was the Sire Lions. I think season 3 was really up there for me as well, because you got to see a lot of how the Mikaelsons acted in the intervening time between when they were made vampires and what we saw now, and how they impacted the people that became part of their Sire Line. You know, their Sire Lines were very different. And of course, we also found out that all of the Mystic Falls vampires are in Klaus's Sire Line, so that was interesting.
Quick question with that, because I know obviously like when the main sire gets killed, everyone in their ascending line or whatever gets killed too.
Yep.
What happened to those vampires? Because like when Klaus died, like when Caroline had died, like did they like break that?
Yeah, I thought of that too, but remember at the end of season 3, Davina's getting ready to cast that spell, and both Klaus and Elijah are in the pool, but Hayley comes and saves Elijah. Klaus, however, is still in the pool, and she casts a spell, and he's broken away from his Sire Line. So he's no longer connected. So Caroline would be okay. I thought of that very same thing, and I had to go back and look it up.
Okay, but then does that mean Elijah's Sire Line is completely gone then?
That's my question. I would assume so. That's one of my lingering questions at the end of the series. Like, did we just eliminate a whole line of vampires?
Right.
We must have, because he did not have his Sire Line broken. So, yeah.
Anyway, continue. What was your least favorite season?
My least favorite season was season 1.
Okay.
So it's funny, Jen S. and I often talk about the fact that we have tried to convince our friend Kelsey, who was on the Vampire Diaries, she's on Supernatural, and others, to watch this show. She's not wrong when she says that season 1 is very hard to get into. Because there's a lot of world building in the originals, season 1, with the different factions. Rebecca is on it throughout the whole season, and she's kind of insufferable. So if you like Rebecca, you probably thought season 1 was great. If you don't like Rebecca, which I never really liked her a lot, it was hard to get through. I did not like Davina when she first came on the scene. I did not care about the witches storyline. The only thing I cared about in season 1 was Klaus, Elijah, and Hayley, and what was going on with the pregnancy. It was very, very, and I didn't also even totally relate to Camille at first, although she grew on me a lot quicker than other characters. So season 1 was hard, and I would have kept watching because I love Joseph Morgan and Daniel Gillies so much. But if it weren't for them, I probably would have stopped watching the show. It was kind of a convoluted mess that didn't come together in the end. So there was a lot to suspend disbelief for and to get into with season 1. And if it weren't for Klaus and Elijah being on the show, I probably would have stopped watching it. Season 5, I agree with Jen S. and of course with you, the cynical one, Jen K, that it was weaker overall. I don't think I disliked it as much as season 1, just because by that point we had grown to like and love, or whatever, all of the characters. They were coming to an end, even though the end might have not satisfied some as much as others, so that's where I would land. But I really liked 2 and 3 the best. I liked the Hollow season, maybe not as much as the other 2 though, just because I've said it before, I'll say it again, I really love when the Mikaelson family is all together, because it's truly a different spin on vampire fiction. Jen S. and I think between the two of us, have consumed a lot of vampire fiction. Maybe you have too, Jen K. But I can vouch for you that nothing like this has ever been told in vampire fiction.
Right.
So to that end, that's, ultimately why I like seasons 2 and 3. So now, next question. Given the character question, the standard CPU character question that changes with each show we do, how did you regard your interest in the series at the beginning when you first started watching it? Where would your character have been? So if you are, say I'm Elijah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been Elijah for a while. But if I was to use this character question and say, where am I at after watching season 1? I probably would land somewhere in the realm of Klaus. I would probably be more Klaus at the start of the series because I didn't like where it was at first. I loved the characters. I loved especially the family, but I felt very conflicted about the show to start. But then my opinion changed over time as the seasons evolved and it got better, and then I became an Elijah. So how would you describe your journey in terms of the characters?
I would have to say mine is pretty much like that as well. Season 1 was hard for me to get through. In fact, I think I had a hard time after the first. Well, no, I wouldn't say the first episode I remember liking, I think. And then it kind of went down. I think it was when they introduced Davina, to be honest.
Well, they introduced her pretty quick.
Yeah, well, yeah, but not the first episode. Wasn't the first episode all about Klaus and Elijah?
No, she was in the first episode too.
Was she?
Yeah,
well, then it might have been that. That was probably why.
Yeah, she came along with Marcel. Remember, Marcel was hiding her in the upstairs of the church.
Yeah, I just feel like that. I thought that happened later, like after 3 or 4 episodes. No? I have a real time perception problem, to say. Well, at any rate, yes, I would have to. I had a hard time with that first season. To get through it, yeah. So and like you had said, with the Elijah and Klaus, if those actors hadn't been on, I probably would have never gotten all the way through. I would have probably jumped the shark after episode 2 or something.
So what character would you have been starting the series?
Starting the series?
Like, imagine you just watched the pilot and you had to pick one of these characters.
Yeah, I probably would pick Klaus. I mean, just part of that because of the knowledge I know of the family coming from Vampire Diaries, probably, is why I would be. Otherwise, I would probably have been more Vincent.
Of course, I'm going to compare your answer to our season 1 through 3 episode. That was a test. Jen K, what would you say when you started the series? Who would you have been?
I think I was more of an Elijah, if I remember correctly, because I did like it. I was interested through it, but then I think just with like production time and stuff, not that like the seasons afterwards were terrible, but I think it just felt so rushed and they were trying to like incorporate so much stuff from the Vampire Diaries. Like I think my interest just kind of kept decreasing a little bit. So, and then it ended up with like season 5 where it's like this was too rushed. I don't know how else they would have done it, but I think they could have done it a different way. And that's where I ended up with like Josh and Vincent.
So Jen S. and I kind of got better and you got worse.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, to be fair, most people watching the originals watched Vampire Diaries, don't you think?
I would have to believe so, yeah.
So I'm just saying that my opinion of the first, I don't, if I had never seen vampires, let's say I just started watching the originals, didn't know anything about Vampire Diaries or whatever, I would not have gotten past that first episode at all. I know I wouldn't have watched anymore.
For sure. I think it all came down to Klaus and Elijah. I think.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying is that because of the actors that they had for those two characters
were brilliant and handsome and charismatic and awesome to watch.
Them has some hot dudes.
On both shows.
And Elijah, I'm in love with Elijah,
Oh, well, he's one of my 5. I'm just going to tell you that. That's how in love with him I am. Daniel Gillies I will follow now throughout the rest of his career just so I can get a glimpse, if you will.
He's a good actor. He is a good actor.
He is a good actor.
Not just looks.
But the looks are good.
Yeah, the looks are good.
Do you think the series finale was a proper send-off for the characters? Despite the fluffy, glittering, flowy stuff.
It's hard. For me, it's hard to say, because again, just season 5 just felt so rushed. I don't know, like, if they would have wanted to do it for the full, 22 episodes like normal shows do, if that would have made it, any more or less different. And especially with it, too, that they are having the second spin-off series. I would say I'm probably more indifferent about it without being like, oh, it's terrible, I shouldn't have done it like that, and like, oh my gosh, that was like the best way to send him off ever kind of thing.
So you're back at meh.
Yeah, I'm back to meh.
I think that I'm trying to think of how to say this in a nice way. I think some of it was good, was nice. I got closure in some of the endings for certain characters where others I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I enjoyed it. I did enjoy a lot of season 5. I'm not going to say that it was totally bad, but it, like Jen's been saying this whole time, it was rushed. I never really realized that until now. So thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome. Happy to help scar you.
Oh. I don't know if we want to talk about any of the predictions or wishes that we had from the prior episode. I know that Jenn wanted everybody to have a happy ending except for Rebecca, Marcel, and Cole, and they're the ones that had the happy ending. They also gave a one-off explanation, and that was one of my questions as well. All this time, I wanted to know how Hayley got pregnant. Somewhere, at some point in this season, someone says Klaus ingested a serum that would allow him to be a father. Did we ever see that?
I don't know where I got this, or I don't know why I think this, but I feel like this happened in a Vampire Diary episode.
What I remember from what happened, at least back in Vampire Diaries, was that once, obviously vampires can't procreate, but once he activated his werewolf side, he was able to procreate a little bit. And I think it was just like miracle one-off that he managed to conceive with Hayley.
But did we ever see him ingest anything, like drink a serum?
No, I thought it was just that he only, just because he initiated his werewolf side, that he was able to do it again.
Well, that's what they said at some point this season, so I was super confused and also felt like that doesn't make any sense. And maybe
it really doesn't.
No, and then that maybe they should have just left it unexplained if they were going to do just a one sentence that didn't make any sense. But that's just me. Let's see what else was interesting. They did not force Klaus and Caroline together. She kissed him goodbye. Heartfelt, I think, but I don't think Caroline actually loved him beyond friendship in the end.
I think they actually had good closure. Compared to some of the other characters or like their deaths. I think how they ended things, and even with it for the time jump with how it happened, like obviously like the characters very like drastically changed, and Caroline's obviously like running the school, and she talks about it herself. It's like obviously when I was younger, quote unquote younger, before I like died, like I had different things in mind, wanted to do different things, and now that I'm quote unquote older and like running a school and have kids, like obviously a lot of things have changed, but she's like, I don't look back on it and regret it kind of thing. And I think like that she's able to talk with Klaus about it. I think that was really nice.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I have nothing else to say. That was well said, Jen K.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just want to point out that somehow I predicted that, and I said it, I listened to the episode, that Hayley would die in sacrifice and that Klaus would be a single father. I didn't say how that would happen, but I don't even remember how I arrived at that conclusion. I guess I'm just really smart. I know. Maybe so. Maybe I'm a witch. Do-do-do. Do you think the originals would hold up with the passage of time? Why or why not? Was it time for it to go? Would you have watched more seasons, or should it have ended sooner?
I think the 5 seasons was probably appropriate. I don't think it could have gone on much longer. Well, just because of the fact that the actors themselves are getting older, obviously, and vampires aren't supposed to age.
There is that trick with vampire fiction.
Yeah, that's that whole thing. So, I mean, maybe one more season. If they could have slowed down, they could have. But then maybe like Jen said earlier, more episodes in this season. How many, like maybe the 22 episodes would have helped making it a little bit more longer. It might have been, but
I think the time amount for it was, I don't say adequate because that's not doing as much credit for it, but like if it went on for much longer, like they did for Vampire Diaries, when like a good chunk of the main character started to leave, and you're like, and the absolute like main character left too. It's like there's only so much that they can do, and even with the 2, they kind of had to like keep time jumping to tell different stories for where they wanted it to be by the time that they got done with the show. I think it just could have used a few more episodes in probably season 4, season 5, maybe to like explain stuff a little bit, But otherwise, I think it was time for. I think the time that they were on for. I think it was a good amount of time, and I think now it was a good time for them to like be done with the series for that.
So you think it was time for it to go?
I think so.
Actually, isn't 5 seasons for a spinoff pretty long? Like, usually? Does spinoffs last that long? I mean, Angel did.
Sometimes, yeah. I think 5 seasons for any show right now is kind of a tall order, number one.
Well, you got completely other network, but you have NCIS, which was a spinoff of JAG. And I think NCIS is, like, long outlived JAG.
Yeah, there are spinoffs that have gone on for a long time. There are spinoffs that have not. I think the originals lands in kind of the average medium place. And it always depends on how good the spinoff is. I think this was a good one. I personally would have watched more seasons. Quite honestly, I think, though, the way they mapped out the story in the end, which is kind of a fault. So one of the things that I've said repeatedly on our originals episodes is that because the concept is so original, that we're talking about vampires that have existed for 1,000 years and have done all of these horrible things and some good things. There was a lot of storytelling possibility, but the writers and the showrunner, who was Julie Plec, who also created the show, took it on the journey they did. I think with where they mapped the story, they kind of painted themselves into a corner where they couldn't have gone on for more. But at the same time, there's a lot of possibilities that they could have explored that they didn't. So I guess it just kind of depends on your point of view. If they had gone a different direction, maybe more seasons would have been okay. I think with the direction they went, they landed in this place that they could go no further. But at the same time, because of the Mikaelsons, Klaus and Elijah particularly, I would have watched more. I would have watched it to the end, and I liked them better than I liked Damon and Stefan. I'm just going to say it.
Oh, I did too. Definitely.
That might be highly unpopular to some people. I don't care. So
I like them better. I think they're cuter, but that just might be an age thing.
Klaus and Elijah were cuter, or Stefan and Damon?
Oh, no. Damon and Stefan.
Oh, okay, that might be an age thing. Although Ian Somerhalder is my age.
So. I highly disagree with that.
Do we agree to disagree again?
Oh, yeah.
I just disagree altogether.
No. Jen's throwing down the gloves.
I was trying to be somewhat civil. Apparently, I don't have to anymore.
No, all pretenses are gone.
No, Damon is fine. It's the other brother I don't care for too much. So, at least Klaus and Elijah were well-rounded.
A well-rounded cuteness? Yes. As opposed to...
I think Cole is hot, but obviously he didn't get a whole lot of screen time.
Well, no. He didn't, yeah. They didn't make him a regular. He was a recurring.
I wonder why they didn't make that character more regular.
Maybe
the actor didn't want to.
I think he had other things going on. I don't think it was a matter of not wanting to. I just think he had other things going on. So they fit him in where they could.
Well, and even with it, too, Rebecca was originally, like, main character, and then she went off to, I think, some sort of pilot, and then she wanted to come back, but I think she only wanted to come back as, like, recurring.
Yeah. She also did a feature. I think she jumped to a movie.
Yeah, she did a movie. I can't tell you what it was. I feel like I've seen it.
I don't remember either.
I don't either.
Because at the time I was like, fine, go. See if I care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I like the boys, not you. So, just my bias. So speaking of this business, the Originals was created by Julie Plec, as we've mentioned, who also created or co-created the aforesaid Vampire Diaries, as well as the Tomorrow People remake, which was on the CW a few years ago, and Containment, which was a 1 season and was canceled. Of course, the Vampire Diaries ran for 8 whole seasons, and the latter 2, of course, were canceled after 1. Do you plan to watch, or have you watched any of these now that you've watched the originals? Why or why not? I think we've all watched the Vampire Diaries.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to watch 1 episode of Containment, and the only reason I watched it was because the actor that played Kai from Vampire Diaries was in it.
Chris
and I made it through one episode, and I was like, nope, I can't do it.
Oh, okay, good to know. I watched the Tomorrow People, actually, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. It started off very slowly. It was kind of...
Wasn't the actor that played Lucifer in Supernatural in it too? Like
Was
he was
he?
one of the main. I thought he was.
Mm-mm.
I don't remember him. I know the actor who played Lincoln on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started on that show. And also the girl that I don't like, and her name is Peyton List. Peyton List was the lead female character who went on to star in Frequency, and she's also the Golden Glider on The Flash. I don't like her. She started on that show.
And then Robbie Amell.
And Robbie Amell!
Oh.
Yes. Robbie Amell's got a cousin that's busy. Who was also in my 5. So, we're really covering them today.
Yep.
So, okay, we've all tried to watch some of these, and we're not really giving them ringing endorsements. Fair enough. Now here's the next question. Would you follow any of the individual ensemble actors from the originals to a new project? Why or why not? So if you found out that Joseph Morgan, for example, was going to be in a TV or movie or anything like that, would you watch it just because Joseph Morgan is in it?
Yes.
That's usually how I get involved with TV shows anyway, so I'd probably do that again. But of course I got scarred from Containment, so I was like, I've learned my lesson. It was like, do that, but take it with a grain of salt.
So who specifically would you follow?
Probably Joseph Morgan. Never pronounce his name, but the actor that played Vincent, for sure.
Yusuf Gatewood?
Yes. Probably the actor that plays Cole, just because I haven't seen him in anything else, and I want to see what else he does.
Nathaniel Bizolik.
Probably the actor that plays Elijah as well.
Daniel Gillies. Hearts.
Yeah. I don't think I'd follow, though, Phoebe Tonkin.
I actually watched her when she was on The Secret Circle, which was also a one and gone show.
Yeah.
Which was okay. I didn't love it, but I didn't love her on that show. So when she showed up on the originals, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like her. But then I ended up liking her. But I wouldn't follow her to a new project. The only two people that I would follow to a new project are Joseph Morgan and Daniel Gillies. I think they far outact everybody else on the show.
I agree with that. 200%.
Jenn is like, yes.
And those are the only two that I have interest in.
Yeah. But I would watch a TV show or a movie with them in it, just to see them.
Quick question. Did they say if they have, like, any upcoming projects after they're done with the show?
I haven't looked it up. I feel like Daniel Gillies is involved in some ongoing non-television stuff, but I wouldn't be able to tell you specifically what that is. You know, I can research it for the blog post and let you know.
Okay.
So now here's $1 million question. Jen K already said she would not be watching Legacies. Jen S, will you be watching the second spinoff of the Vampire Diaries universe called Legacies?
I may try to watch the first episode. I suspect I'm not going to like it.
I'm exactly where you are. Part of me is fatigued. Part of me is like, none of the cute guys are going to be on this show, and Matt Davis is all right, but he's not enough for me to be like, he's awesome. There's no Ian Somerhalder, there's no Paul Wesley, he'd be at the bottom. There's no Joseph Morgan, and there's no Daniel Gillies. What would I be watching this for? And also, I just think that the sort of teenager aspect of it is going to be at the forefront, and not that there's anything wrong with that. That's the CW's demographic. We're probably, all just risking our own ageism by saying that we watch these shows. But sometimes you like the adult factor, if you will. Yeah. And I just get the sense that Legacies is not going to have the adult factor. No. Except for...
It's like a Supernatural Gossip Girl.
Oh, no. Well, you just convinced me that it's probably a gone situation. I'm sure Gossip Girl was fine, but really not my cup of tea.
You're welcome.
She scarred me. She scarred me and she scarred you.
That's what I'm here for.
In the end, after everything we've said, would you... This is the key question, because I ask this every time, but now it's for real. If somebody is walking into listening to this originals episode of Couch Potatoes Unite, and they want to know, do we recommend the originals, what would you say? Now that all 5 seasons have played. Uh-oh.
I would recommend it. I would.
I think I would too.
You would? That is surprising. Qualify your answer.
I mean, at least like for the first part of it, like if you follow the I guess like if they like knew a little bit about the Vampire Diaries and like watched that, and then they jump ship to the originals, I would recommend it more. But if they were, like, going in blind and, like, didn't know anything about Vampire Diaries, I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
I think they would need to have a little bit more appreciation / background from the Vampire Diaries in order to get a better understanding of the originals.
I actually liked the originals more than I did the Vampire Diaries.
So you would recommend it?
I would recommend it, yeah.
Over the originals? I mean, over the Vampire Diaries?
Yeah. I agree with Jen, what she said, that you kind of need to watch some sort, the
first 4 seasons of the Vampire Diaries.
Maybe you don't have to watch all of the Vampire Diaries seasons, but have some kind of a knowledge. At least when the beginning, at least the beginning series, the episode, sorry.
I think they split off in, like, season 4, so if you can at least, like, last that long through it, then then jump on ship to originals.
Yeah, they actually split off. They season 1 of the originals parallels season 5 of the Vampire Diaries.
Oh, is that late?
Yeah.
So if you can get through at least those first 4 or 5 seasons of Vampire Diaries, you might want to watch that. I definitely watched the originals, yeah.
I would recommend the originals over the Vampire Diaries. I think you can watch the originals and be all right, because you get a lot of backstory in the originals, and they do repeat a lot of the things that they said about the originals on the Vampire Diaries. That being said, I think that your connection to the characters would be far deeper if you watched the first 4 seasons of the Vampire Diaries. Not to mention the fact that if I was going to rehash that old chestnut, the first 4 seasons of the Vampire Diaries are the better of the 8 anyway. So you would be enjoying those seasons, and then if you decided... Season 5 takes quite a turn, so if you decided I don't want to watch any more Vampire Diaries, you'd be okay, and you could watch the originals. But I do think the originals is smart. It's very multi-layered. I don't think the writers always have a handle on all the details they're throwing at you, but I think there are so many charismatic and interesting characters. You have an original... not being funny, original concept for the whole foundation for the story. New Orleans is a really interesting backdrop, and it brings in a lot of culture and sort of inclusiveness to it that perhaps the Vampire Diaries did not. So I think there's a lot to enjoy about the originals, and you can do it without the Vampire Diaries. It's just like watching Marvel television shows without watching the Marvel movies. You don't have to watch the Marvel movies to understand what's happening in the Marvel television shows, but since they're all connected, they're richer and it's more fun if you've watched all of it, because then you get the full depth and connection of the universe, and that's how I feel about this universe too. With all that said, is there anything else you want to say about the originals? Any of it? Seasons 1 through 5, your deep and abiding love for Cole or for Elijah? How you liked, the various, I don't know, New Orleans was cool, they ate a lot of beignets. Anything you want to say?
I think we covered everything.
I think we did a pretty good job of covering.
Yeah, we were thorough. I agree. And because we were so thorough, I guess that means that I get to thank Jenn S. and Jenn K. for joining me on the originals panel. And I actually want to I should say thank you very much to Jenn S. for being part of the whole panel from the beginning. Woo! And then thank you to Jenn K. for jumping on the panel when we needed a substitute in a critical moment, which is what happened. So thank you very much. And since I thanked you, and I did that, and we do all these things, it's now time for me to say, CPU is produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, and hails from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, would you take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play? That means give us stars, comments, reviews. Let us know how we're doing, what you like, what you don't. If you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via Facebook and Twitter, though of course we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We have several more new episodes coming down the pike. I listed them in our intro, and if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us on Google. We top the searches and we're easy to find. I can't sell that point enough. You can also subscribe to our website, our channels, and social media accounts to stay up on new events and episodes automatically. So until the next CPU episode, the original series is available to stream on, you guessed it, the streaming service with the little red icon. They've got the CW contract. We don't have their contract. It's a long-standing thing. Our coverage of the originals, though, as a panel, on the other hand, is now done. Though I wouldn't be surprised if it cropped up in other discussions from time to time. If you have nominations for shows we should cover on our podcast, contact us via social media or our email. You can volunteer to be a panelist, too. In the meantime, and until next time, until next episode, new episodes published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.
Bye.
Oh, bye.
Bye-bye.